For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Emmy Law. How's it going today, Emmy?
Great. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm glad to finally have you on the podcast. We talked a little bit before we jumped on here. We were supposed to do something. I think it was going to be July, but then, as most of my listeners know, I was going through some stuff then and basically ghosted you, and I felt really bad about it, and I feel really bad about it. But I'm glad Craig reached out and was like, "Hey, can we get something set up?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do that." So
yeah,
I'm really excited to sit down and chat with you a little bit. Before we kind of get into the new single that released a couple weeks ago and everything else you got going on, let's give you kind of an opportunity to introduce yourself. What's your origin story in music? What got you started? You know, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, my name is Emmy Law. I am originally from Gainesville, Georgia, and I grew up singing and playing piano and everything. And I had a very classical education, so I was a music ed major, all in the classical world. Wasn't really writing songs until the end of college, and so then graduated college and taught music lessons and moved to Atlanta and started just playing in the music scene there. I was there for 4 years and had a great time and did a lot of growing there. And it's just one big learning process. So now I'm in Nashville. I moved here last February, so February 2021, and just learning more about songwriting and having a blast.
Awesome. So you're rapidly approaching your 1 year anniversary of moving to Nashville. That's got to be exciting.
It is exciting.
Nice. Yeah. So you're originally from Gainesville, Georgia. Where is that down near, is that in South Georgia near the Georgia, or is it more Atlanta area?
Yeah, it's like an hour north of Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when you say Gainesville, Georgia, my brain automatically does one of those Kansas City deals where it's like it could be Missouri or Kansas because they've both gotten them and they're like right next to each other. It's like, oh, well, maybe Gainesville, Georgia is like south, but I've driven through South Georgia 100 times and I should know better than that. So cool. And then you ultimately ended up moving to Atlanta for a few years. What was that experience like living in Atlanta?
I had a great time and I just learned a whole lot, I learned how to play with a band. I learned a lot about the local music scene. I learned about booking shows. The Atlanta scene isn't really my scene for my music, but there's still plenty of like indie pop stuff going on. Like there's still a lot of interesting bands and there's a lot of creativity in Atlanta. People always think rap, but there's actually a lot going on there. But it was just, for me, it was a really big city. Yeah. Nashville's a lot more of a community feel, and Atlanta was just so freaking big. Yeah. So.
And we'll definitely get into that in a little bit because that's the one thing that I really enjoy about Nashville is the community base behind it. But so when you moved to Atlanta, did you move there specifically to start pursuing music, or had you been doing that previously?
I had been trying to do it for a couple of years in Gainesville, but there's nothing going on. There's just a bunch of families. I love Gainesville, but there's just no one's making music there. So I went for music and I wasn't ready to move to Nashville. I always kind of had Nashville on my radar, but I just wasn't ready. So I just moved to Atlanta first. And I'm glad I did. Yeah.
Nice. Gotcha. And you stayed in Atlanta for 4 years and you started making your name doing open mics, if I was reading everything correctly, right? Yeah. What was the open mic scene like there? Because it seems like that would be one of those things in Atlanta that there'd be a lot of open mics.
Yeah. There were actually a few really quality ones that they would have like competitions and some, good quality artists would come. Some of them would come from out of town. And so, there were some really good, there were 3 really good ones, the Eddie Zadok one, the Red Clay one, and then there's 99X put on one.
Yeah. Cool. So kind of taking a step back before we jump into Nashville and what you've been doing since you moved to Nashville. Who do you remember who originally introduced you to music or the idea that you could become a musician?
My dad played the cello.
Okay.
And the guitar, and I was always like listening to him play. It was kind of just naturally in me from a young age. I was just always kind of singing. And then yeah, I just loved chorus at school. I was a rule follower, like a really, really try hard kid. So I just loved chorus and singing your part and everything. But I didn't have much of a creative upbringing. I wasn't writing songs.
Okay.
It's not my parents' fault. I wasn't there yet. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then at what point was it once you moved to Atlanta that you started exploring the opportunity of your creative element of writing music?
The end of college. So I knew some guys that were in a couple bands, and I listened to their music and was like, this is really fun. So it was probably like junior year of college, I started writing songs. Yeah.
Gotcha. And that you would have still been in Gainesville at that point, right?
I was in college. It was like the University of North Georgia. It was very close though. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Georgia all the way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And so you spent 4 years in Atlanta, and then last year you moved to Nashville.
Yeah.
How's it been going in Nashville?
So good. And I had to take a year off because of the pandemic. I was like 2 weeks from moving when the pandemic hit. So I ended up moving to my parents' house for 9 months. I got so lucky though, because I hadn't quite moved yet. It was like I was a week from moving. But I really do love it here. Yeah. There's just so much creativity, and it's kind of just exploding with people creating stuff, which is what I want to be doing. So it's inspiring.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit, or we just talked about this a little bit, but the community behind Nashville, I think, is what draws a lot of people to Nashville. That city's always growing. It's been 2 years since I've been there, and I'm sure I wouldn't recognize the place.
Yeah.
So, how long did it take you to kind of get accustomed to Nashville, or was it like an instantaneous thing where you were just kind of there and it's like, okay, I feel like I'm at home now?
Probably a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You start going out to the rounds and you start seeing some of the same people, and it does start to feel like a community thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I think people back in Georgia, like my hometown, they think that I'm here to, make it. They just think you go to Nashville to go and get that massive deal and become Taylor Swift or Carrie Underwood or whatever. But really I'm here it's so great. Like there's so many benefits of just being here, like just living here. And like, yeah, it doesn't take you long to just feel, at least for me, like to just feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, it's one of those deals where the conversations come up for me and Live and Amplified, like what our next move is. Cause since I'm kind of the figurehead of everything, it's like I move every few years because my regular job kind of rewards that, because you like move up and all that stuff. And everybody's like, well, you should just move to Nashville. And it's like, yes, I'd love to, but what you said before we jumped on here about it being cold right now, like, I mean, it's cold here in Texas too. So it's like, I'm not in a real win-win position there, but just the idea of having to deal with ice and snow and
it's not much out of the year though. It's a great summer and fall, and the winter is not that bad. No.
Okay. So it'll be like when I went to school in I'm from Chicago originally, and I went to school in Southern Illinois. So I'd imagine it's probably a lot similar to.
I heard some people saying it's colder right now than it normally is. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just have last year and this year, and it snowed a lot last year. So
yeah. The last 2 years in Nashville have been interesting. Like right after the pandemic hit, they got that the really bad tornado, and then it's like you sit here and think back on how the last 2 years in Nashville and the bomb or whatever it was, and that was just rough. But anyways, so kind of moving forward, you moved to Nashville, and then you start working on the EP. What's the name of the EP? Bitter Heart. I'm Bitter Heart. I was about to call it Bittersweet, but Bitter Heart. There you go.
Yeah.
How was that like before we jump into your new single? How was that process of working on a new? Had you started working on that EP before you moved to Nashville, or was that strictly a Nashville project?
Yeah, I was still living in Georgia when I recorded that. So I came and stayed over some nights. I just stayed here for a few days and recorded it. Yeah. In December before I moved. Yeah.
Gotcha. So you were still living in Georgia, but you had recorded it in Nashville?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was trying to plant roots already. I was trying to get myself here, So I wanted to, and that was like my first shift away from the Atlanta guys that I've been working with. I wanted to kind of branch out. So yeah.
Gotcha. That's really cool and really smart because Gainesville's not that far from Nashville, is it? A couple hours?
It's like 4.5 hours.
Oh,
five,
really? Oh,
about
wow.
5 hours. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I get it's been so because I used to make that drive from Chicago all the way down to South Florida where my parents live. And I guess I just completely misconstrued how far Nashville and is from Georgia. So
yeah,
that's rough.
It's there. It's a ways.
Yeah. So you released the EP in Bitter Heart in June. Yep, that's the month. In June. And did you release anything after that for your most recent single, or is I Don't Want It the most recent, or like the?
Yeah, I released 2 more singles. Black and White, and then I did a Christmas tune, Different, this year.
Okay. Let's talk about that for a second, because I've started to see a lot of indie musicians releasing Christmas music, at least during the pandemic, the last few years.
Yeah.
Which is like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because it's definitely, you basically have that one song and then every Christmas it just regenerates and
I know.
You're good to go. What was that process like of writing a Christmas tune? How long did it take you to write, all that stuff?
Well, for me, it's always been on my bucket list to do an original one. And now another thing on my bucket list is to do a cover that's my own. So gotta check that one off now. But I wrote the chorus last Christmas. And when I wrote the chorus last year, I was like, okay, I want to do this one day. And so this year I came upon it in like September. I found the chorus and I just went ahead and wrote the verses. Yeah. Gotcha.
And so then you released it December, and it looks like it's doing pretty good out on Spotify there. And
yeah, it got on a couple of really good playlists. I was really thankful. It's always, you never know what's going to happen, So
yeah, for sure.
I love it. I really love the song.
Nice. And so let's jump to your most recent release here. I Don't Want It, which, like I mentioned, was released 2 weeks ago. What's kind of the story behind this song?
This was supposed to be like my first pop-ish song, like release. And so the song is just about standing up for something that's not good for you. The song, it's in the context of a relationship, but I kind of see it as being anything that you just need to like stop a toxic pattern and just say, nope, this is not good for me. So this was my second collab with Shane Becker. He's up in, ironically, I moved to Nashville and got connected with a producer in freaking New Jersey, but I love this guy. And so there's a guy that lives here, Josh Bonanno, and he does my vocals and my mixing. So it's like I do the in-studio stuff with him, and then the producers in New Jersey. Shane.
Okay. Yeah. I thought you were about to say that there's a guy in Nashville that's like best friends with him, and that would
right.
Very, very interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah.
So awesome. So what made you kind of want to start experimenting with a new sound or a new genre, essentially, since you kind of merged over into the pop world?
Well, my eyes have just been opened a lot. Like, I feel like I've learned everything just by making mistakes. Just like I've had to learn that, I've worked with guys in the studio who were just hitting record. They were basically just audio engineers, which is fine. Yeah. But I really have been hungry because I'm not good at the production side. It's not my forte. I love writing the song and then working with a producer. And I was so hungry for that in Atlanta. I never had it. Like my previous releases were just kind of bare bones which that stuff is great too. I definitely want to do that stuff, but I definitely am wanting to put out music that can make it on some of these playlists that are a little more produced. That's one of my goals, and then release like an acoustic EP. And so, and this guy is so creative, and I've kind of learned a lot about splits and how artists and producers work together. And that whole process.
Gotcha. What I do really enjoy about I Don't Want It, as I was listening to it yesterday and today, and as I was going to get my breakfast this morning, I love how it's a pop track, but it's not overproduced. I really appreciate, because sometimes you get these musicians that merge into the pop realm, and then they let the producer like overproduce it, and it just kind of becomes a bag of tricks, essentially. And I really appreciate the fact that, yes, it's a pop track, but you can recreate it live very simply. Like just when you go out and do shows, you can recreate it live. And that's been like one of my big pet peeves about a lot of the pop music that's been coming out recently, that it's so overproduced that you can't recreate that live. It's like you're killing your live music business. Or it's a completely different song if you do try and recreate it live, which, not saying that's a bad thing, but it's just, that's the one thing. That's when I listened to it the first time, I was like, this is a pop track and it's not overproduced. I love it. It's amazing.
Good. Thank you. Yeah. And it's like, the goal is to be subtly pop, it's hard. It's hard to find that. So that's good to hear.
So what went into the writing process for this song? How long had you been working on, like, writing wise?
This one just came. So sometimes they just come in a night. It's kind of weird. It isn't often, but this one, and I wasn't even planning on writing a song about this. It's like my subconscious just started singing "I Don't Want It," and I was like, okay, what am I saying right now? So and then after the hook was "I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't want your love," and then I just started there, and then it started as a piano ballad. I brought it to him as a piano ballad, and said, but it was very boring. It didn't go anywhere. I was like, dude, we got to do something with this, and so I really like what he did with it.
Nice. How long ago did you originally bring him the idea, even as the piano ballad?
I think that was in like September.
Okay. So it came together really quickly then, from September to January. That's incredible.
It did. Listen, dude, just got to do it. I'm on this thing. I want to put like out a handful of singles this year. The only way that's going to happen, there are so many steps from point A to point B. It's crazy. And so,
I really appreciate that ambition and that fire, because I sit here and I've watched a lot of musicians like I'm not going to say waste the entire 2 years of the pandemic, but they've just kind of sat on the back burners. And now that things are starting to open up, they're like, oh, I'm going to release 12 singles this year. And it's like, why didn't you release 12 singles the last 2 years? You'd have really been somewhere now. And it's interesting, but no, it's awesome. And I really appreciate the fire. And I think I Don't Want It set you up really nicely for whether you want to just do singles for the rest of your career or rest of the year, or if you eventually do an EP, LP, whatever it is you end up doing. I think that sets you up really nice. So
I'm excited.
So you were, as far as the piano part, you're classically trained piano, or okay? And is that your primary instrument when you are writing, or do you dabble in guitar or anything else?
I would say acoustic and piano both. So I'll usually like take a song, and if all the water is squeezed out of the sponge on one instrument and I'm just like, I can't figure out, then I'll go to the other instrument. And I'll play it fast or slow. Like I try to do it a bunch of different ways to see if my brain can come up with anything new. So I usually do both in a session. Gotcha.
And so now that I Don't Want It's out, and it's been out for a few weeks or a couple of weeks, what's going through your mind right now that it's out?
I'm excited. I've been pushing the crap out of it. And then I'm recording my next one. So I love the next one. I feel like it follows this one really well. It feels so good. Like, even if no one listens, like it just feels good. I'm finally at a place that I love these releases. Like some of my releases in the past, I think if I had just heard them, I wouldn't really listen to them. But these songs, I feel like if it wasn't my song and I heard it, I would really like it and add it to my playlist, which is so weird to admit, but it just feels so good to like these songs.
Yeah.
Like genuinely like them. Like
And,
I love them.
you know, it's funny because it takes a lot of musicians decades to kind of come to grips with that they're trying so hard early on to produce music that other people would like, that they become like, you always hear that story about musicians that are like synonymously known for one specific song, and it's like, I hate that song and they hate performing it and all this stuff, and it's like, well, that's because you made a song that you didn't like, and if you enjoyed playing it, or if you actually like the song, you'd enjoy playing it no matter what. And so it takes, just from my perspective and a lot of the musicians I've talked to, it takes a lot of musicians a lot of years to come to that term. And
it's so weird. Yeah.
And it what it really does is it brings a mark of authenticity to your performance. So like when you're performing these songs that you actually enjoy, the audience is going to know and they're going to feel that. And it's like, oh, she's actually enjoying this. Whereas if you're playing something that you just kind of wrote to try and get some traction, it's like, yeah, I don't really connect to this song. Like people are going to notice. So
absolutely.
Which is incredible. So you're working on the next single. Is there anything that you can say about it, or is it all still?
Well, there's going to be a pop version of this song, and there's going to be an acoustic version of it. So it's my first time doing two versions of a song. I can't wait. And they sound drastically different.
Nice.
I'm excited. Yeah.
Awesome. And you said you didn't say, you said you're trying to release a few different singles this year. So I'm assuming it'll probably be like March or April before this one's ready.
Yeah. I don't want to do it too close, but yeah, probably March or April.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And is the plan to eventually do another EP, or do you kind of just see yourself staying in singles realm?
Definitely want to do an EP.
Okay.
Yeah. I definitely want to do like an indie folk EP at some point. But right now I'm going for more like produced, feel good, like sounds in the songs.
Gotcha. So you're kind of staying in both worlds of indie folk and pop. Do you see a world where you expand into something a little bit different, like a third genre, or do you kind of like where you're at now in the indie folk and pop?
I think the songs will determine that, like if I'm hopefully recording my best songs, which is always hard to do, hard to decide.
Yeah.
But as long as they're vocally centered, as long as my voice is because I really want it just to be that to be the takeaway from my songs is like the sound of my voice being like standing out, and then I think the production, there's some different stuff. It's not going to be rap or country probably. So
that's fair. Yeah. I mean, I would always be really interested to see these artists that kind of stay in the pop realm or in like the indie folk realm. And then they just have this moment of, you know what, screw the system. And then they release like a punk album or, just something completely left of center. And, you see a lot of mainstream artists do that where they just veer left and do something completely out of the norm.
Yeah.
And then they get pelted for it. But it's like, oh, it's
art, dude.
Yeah.
It's art. Yeah.
So that's awesome.
For sure.
So I Don't Want It's out now. When you sit down to write music, since you're actively in the process of writing, what is kind of your process when you sit down to write music?
Usually it depends on if it's like a therapy writing session when I'm just writing to write. And some of my best songs to me come out when I'm doing that. It just kind of just whatever comes out and I have no plan. But then I'm trying to get better at planned writing. So I'm way better at journal writing and songs coming out of it. And usually I just play an instrument and sing gibberish for a few minutes. I usually don't write lyrics first. Yeah. Almost never write lyrics first. Yeah.
That, in my brain, that just seems to make more sense where you start working on the instrumentation first and then the lyrics kind of come and you kind of morph the lyrics. Yeah. Is that kind of what you do? Is that what you're?
Yes. Yeah. And then I'll sing a melody and then find the words that marry that melody. Always have but you got to start with the melody for me, but it'd be good for me to work on writing the lyrics first,
Yeah. It's
just, don't like it.
In my head, it's just like, I'd almost have to have like a melody or an idea of what it's going to sound like before I start writing words to it. But that's just, in my head, but I'm not a musician, so what do I know? So, awesome. So that's kind of your writing process, and then kind of moving forward, what's your live show situation looking like? I know you're doing the Twitch streaming, which we'll talk about here in a second, but are you actively doing live shows at all, or?
So yes, but when I was in Atlanta, it's all learning process. Like I put all my emphasis on playing shows, and I wasn't doing a lot of co-writing, and I wasn't putting as much emphasis on like my recording, the quality of it. I feel like, anyway, I'm not putting as much emphasis right now on shows as I am recording, because I want to put out music that I can actually play on, like I feel like that makes more sense. But I'm playing a lot of rounds around town, which I don't really call those shows. They're just, you play with other artists and you meet other artists, and it's great, but I'm not going to get any traction on my music with that. But it's just to meet other writers, which is great. So not really. I'm not, because it spreads me too thin. I've had to learn that. Like if you have a huge show schedule and you're also trying to put out good music, like it's just hard to do both. So yeah, I'm trying to focus,
Yeah, for sure. And then once you get to that point where you're happy with the music that you have out, then you can start focusing on live shows. Yeah. Because it's that weird thing where it's like, especially on the indie level, it's like you kind of need those live shows to make some sort of a revenue, because you can't really count on it on Spotify unless you're making millions upon millions of streams. Literally. Yeah. But that's a whole different conversation that we could jump into, and I'm going to avoid it today. Cool. So no, that's awesome. And then you mentioned you're trying to get better at doing planned writing, and that's more in reference to like co-writes and stuff like that. Also, how often are you doing co-writes right now, or is that still just kind of? When I first moved here, I was doing them a fair amount, but then I found that like a lot of them weren't going anywhere, and it wasn't either one of our faults. It's just, to me, it's like if you don't really have a plan for the song, or you can just like spin your wheels, and like time as an indie artist, you're already having to do so much. There's so many things that are pulling at your time. So I'm still trying to decide how much co-writing I want to do, but co-writing is very hard for me. It doesn't come easy. It's really difficult because you don't really know the person. I have to really feel a song to be able to write well to it. So gotcha. That makes sense. And that just comes to the point of being a little bit more selective with your co-writes. And being that you're in Nashville, I'm sure you found your creative tribe. I'm still working on it. Still working on it? Yes, it's hard. I've met a lot of people that are great, but we're just not, it's like dating. You meet a lot of good people. It's like, you're going to make someone really happy, but not me. Gotcha. That's fair. It's hard. And, because that's the one thing that I've come to learn about Nashville is like, once you find that creative tribe, like you're having a good experience right now in Nashville. Once you find that community, like that close, like the entire city's a community and everybody supports everyone, which is odd in and of itself, because I've never been in a city that supports everyone the way Nashville does. It's crazy. Yes. It's awesome. Yeah. Like even where I live in Texas, it's like, I know like 3 different groups that are constantly trying to undermine each other. And it's like, all right. Atlanta was so competitive. Yeah. It's crazy. Like it was so cutthroat. Like all the open mics, like everybody was against each other. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. Gotta get out of here. Yeah. Yes. But yeah, so once you find that creative community, like the close-knit community in Nashville, it'll make your experience that much better. Yeah. So, awesome. So you got the song out now. What's kind of the plan moving forward for the next few weeks? All that stuff. Next few weeks, I'm doing vocals for my next song and just continuing to kind of knock on doors and submit the new single. Just trying to make the songs the focus this year, one little step at a time. So I definitely want to give it enough TLC. And that's the thing as an artist, is you're always, by the time the song comes out, you're kind of ready for the next one, but that song just came out, literally. Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to really push it. Yeah. It's hard. Yeah, for sure. Like, and I go call back to it, the podcast I did last night with a musician in Arkansas. She just released an EP, and the next day her team is asking, "All right, so what's the next release?" And it's like, I understand like having a plan, but when you just release an EP and you're already asking for the next EP, it's like, come on, guys, like for real.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And yeah, and a whole nother conversation is knowing how much to invest in your music. I actually heard a guy saying once that it would be better to throw like thousands behind one single that you really believed in terms of marketing instead of splitting those thousands between multiple singles. And I mean, I see what he's saying. Like, I do.
Yeah. And I mean, in a just world where everybody has unlimited amounts of money, you put it in every single, because as you're releasing singles, you obviously think that one song is going to be that next hit for you. And so in a just world, it's like, here, we're going to put $5, $10, $15,000 behind the promotion of this single in every single we ever do.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, money isn't that freely given. So,
and there's a lot of sharks in the water.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation, but just knowing where to put your money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you go through, since you're kind of actively going through this process of selecting singles and which ones you're going to release, how do you kind of go through that process? How do you know what ones you want to release?
Well, I trust the producer that I've been working with, and also the guy, Josh Bonanno, that I've been working with in Nashville. And I kind of like show them my songs, and I'll tell them the ones that I like the best, but then I always get a second opinion.
Gotcha.
But I'll have like 10 songs that I'm like, okay, these are ones that I love. And then, yeah.
Gotcha. How many songs for the series of releases that you're doing this year? How many songs have you written versus how many you're planning on releasing? Essentially, how many are on the cutting room floor?
It's
right
depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, like 20 or 25.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's depressing.
And is that a situation where they just weren't good for the moment, or you possibly go back to like revisit them, or the songs just didn't connect for you?
Well, I have like what I call my little journal entry songs, which like I'll play them on my Twitch channel, and I love, I do, but I just don't think they have as much of a mainstream appeal. So I'm trying to put ones out right now that I feel like more people would connect to, you know, and save my singer-songwriter songs for an EP. Okay. I have a joke, like if I ever get a terminal illness, I'll just record like 5 albums. And just be like, there you go. There it was.
Yeah.
Like
everything that you have. And wow, that's, you know, I've always been like, this is something that I've been interested in the last several years, is the amount of music that doesn't get recorded for whatever reason. It doesn't make the cut. And it's like, I'd love to see like every band just do a cutting room floor album or come up with some like cute name for it. And it's just like, these songs we didn't think was good enough. And then I just like to laugh at when one of those songs is like that big hit that takes them to the moon. So
yes, one day I want to do that. That'll be so fun.
Yeah. And even if you did it yourself, because like, I mean, it looks like you do Twitch, so you've got the equipment to at least do a decent recording of yourself, like just do demo albums of that stuff.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
How long have you been doing Twitch since you brought it up?
Yeah. Let's see, I started August of 2020. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So this August, about 1.5 years is the answer to your question.
Yeah. Gotcha. And how's that whole process been going?
I love it. It's a huge blessing in my life. Yeah. I love it so much.
How often do you stream?
Right now I'm going 2 days a week for 3 hours each day. So 6 hours a week. Yeah.
Oh, wow. It
sounds like a lot. Yeah.
I mean, like just knowing how the Twitch community is, it seems like a lot, but it's not, because like a regular live show, depending on where you're playing, is usually 2 hour and a half sets, right?
Yeah.
At least in Nashville, I would assume that's how it is, because you know, so that's really not that bad. And then plus with the Twitch stream, there's a lot more talking in between songs, because you got to engage the community and stuff.
It's a hangout. It's so fun. Yeah.
How's the community for you on Twitch? because it's
Right.
always interesting. You always get that one troll in there that's
I
just
know. I thought, well, I have two really good mods. Mods are
yeah,
you're the moderators,
yeah,
and they'll block people. It's honestly doesn't happen very often. I thought I was going to get trolled, and I just was expecting the worst. But like, it's just been the most welcoming community. The
yeah,
the music fans on Twitch are incredible.
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
actually I'm actually looking at simulcasting our podcast on Twitch.
Yes.
I've got to reconfigure the entire back end of the podcast, or like the entire, because we couldn't do it through Zoom. We'd have to go through a different program.
Okay.
And so I'm just trying to I know what program I want to use, but it's gonna like double my
Yeah.
costs for the entire podcast.
Oh
It's just
man.
like
Oh man. Of
yeah.
course. But I think it's so worth it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like,
I
and
do.
because the other idea, like just seeing the music community on Twitch, it's like, okay, the podcast would work because you're kind of tapping into two communities. Like they have their talk show segment, and I've never really looked at that community, but it seems like a pretty decent one. And then you got the music community, and then back right before the pandemic started, we started doing this thing called the Jam Session podcast, and it was essentially it harkened back to our original Live and Amplified series that we did in 2016, where it was a podcast mixed with like live performances. So they'd come on, they'd play like their 5 most recent songs, like whatever it was, and then we'd talk about it, so it's like more like a talk show. And I was like, man, we could just do this on Twitch and it would cut down the amount of production that we'd have to do. We don't have to go anywhere. We could go somewhere, but it's not going to take 4 hours to record one show and then like 12 hours to edit everything together. It would just be, okay, we got an hour. Let's go.
Yeah.
So, that's.
I say do it. I know it's a lot of work, but.
Yeah. I'm in the process of cleaning out this back what's supposed to be my dining room, and it's just like all right, we're gonna make it work. So
do what you got to do. My living room is like not a living room anymore.
Yeah,
it's just
my dad, next time he comes into town, he's gonna be like, so where do you eat dinner at? And I'm like, well, you see this desk right here? I'm the only one that lives here. This desk is all I need.
That's all you need.
But the sacrifices you make to be a creative person. So
I know I wouldn't have it any other way. I love it. It's great.
Same. But outside of music, when you kind of need that moment to escape from writing or try and regenerate yourself, if you're in a creative block, what are some of your hobbies? What do you do to kind of get away?
Well, I love the gym and I can't do home workout. So I go to Planet Fitness, $10 a month, man. It's great. And then I love yoga. I can't afford a yoga. Like yoga studios are so expensive, but I love yoga and I'll look for like yoga events around Nashville. Sometimes they have free ones or like, and I just love, I love hiking and stuff. I don't do it enough though. I just try to get outside. I try to get out of this room. That's my hobby. Just get air.
I need to start doing that, because just getting out in general, because I've been home for a year and a half. And then right before Christmas, they're like, all right, everybody come back to the office. I'm like, cool, I'm out. We were there for a month. And then like all the COVID cases started spiking again. And we went pretty much a year and a half without like any real outbreaks of COVID. Like it was really good. And then we come back for a month and then we had like 8 to 10 COVID cases. And I'm like, all right. And then they sent us all home. And now it's just like week by week, we're waiting for that email to say, okay, Monday, you guys can come in. And
so you prefer to be in the office, to be out?
Yeah. To be fair, there's pros and cons. Like I enjoy working at home because I know the latest I have to be at work is 10 a.m. because I got a 10 a.m. meeting every morning. And so I could literally roll out of bed at 9:55, throw a shirt on and sit down and I'm on time.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah. Whereas when I got to go to the office, it's like, okay, well, I got to be there by like 9:30 because then I got to go through this whole process of getting my computer on and all this stuff. And it's like, I don't like it, but getting out, it helps. So
mentally it does.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. For sure. No, that's awesome. And then I've heard hiking in Nashville's really good. Or
Surprisingly, there's actually a lot of pretty hikes around here. I had not, yeah, there's pretty lakes and hiking and
I've seen a lot of there's a few musicians that I pay attention to that do like a secondary YouTube channel where they
okay.
talk about all the different nature things. Like one guy does fishing videos off of
I love that.
what's the big lake in Nashville?
Do not ask me. I'm not.
Whatever
I
the
have
big
much
lake
to
in
learn.
whatever the big lake is in Nashville, he does like fishing videos off there. And then there's one person that I watch, they do like different hiking and like non-traditional stuff.
Yeah,
Like
that's
non-traditional.
cool.
So it's really interesting. And it's like you guys are making it really hard for me not to just move to
And
Nashville.
one thing I haven't done yet is like, okay, it's just so weird how you can live somewhere for almost a year. Like I'm close to like Memphis.
Uh-huh.
I've never been to Memphis. Like
Really?
it's like I'm currently living somewhere that is so close to all these different places
Yeah.
that I just have never been because I was away in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I need to just take these like hour trips to just
Yeah.
go visit these places, you know?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, that's like a lot of people that are watching or will watch that are in Nashville are probably going to be celebrate when I say this, but in the next 2 years, I will probably end up being in Nashville.
Yes.
It's
Come
probably going.
on.
But the issue is, it's like I can't just get up and move for.
Yeah.
You know, I need to have a job or something. Like
Yeah.
I still got a lot of bills that I'm paying off, but you know,
Yeah.
everybody does. So
Yeah, for sure.
we'll see how it goes. And I know Jeff's not going to like that answer because he's out in New Mexico. He wants me to move back out to New Mexico.
Ooh.
And it's like, I might just stay here in Waco. Who knows? Just
Yeah.
piss everybody off. And
Do
plus,
what's best for you.
yeah, for sure. I know my
Your heart tells you.
my family would be happy if I moved to Nashville though.
Because they're in Florida.
My dad lives in South Florida, and then my sister lives in, I guess, technically central Indiana. She lives like 2 hours
okay.
from Indianapolis,
So
like
you'd
2
be
hours from
closer.
Indianapolis, 2 hours to Chicago. So like right in there somewhere. Yeah. So she doesn't live too far from where we grew up. So
Okay.
they'd be happy,
Nice.
but, and I, you know, it's just one of those deals where I was talking to my buddy about it. I was like, moving back out to New Mexico, I'd have a lot of friends, but if I have a feeling that if I move out to Nashville, I know a lot of people out there. And so it wouldn't be but 10 days before I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a community of some sort there.
Yes.
So we'll see
There's
how it
always
goes.
something going on.
That is true. That is
Yeah.
very true. So before we leave, we have 2 things left to accomplish. Do you want to end the podcast on a serious note or a fun note, not serious note?
We can end on a fun note.
Okay. So serious note. One thing that we like to do on the podcast is pass on knowledge to the younger generation to ensure that years coming, we have a generation of new musicians coming up. So out of all the lessons you've learned in your musical career so far, what's one piece of advice that you have for that next generation or that next musician that wants to move to Nashville or take that next step?
Well, one time I asked this girl that I really looked up to, her name is Danielle Ate the Sandwich. That's her artist name. But she told me, she emailed me back. I sent her an email asking for advice. She emailed me back and said, this great email. And she said to stay fiercely authentic. And that has stuck with me. I actually printed out that email and have it hanging on the wall because, you know, it will catch up to you if you're trying to be something that you're not. It just will, and you won't be able to sustain it. And so I just say be fiercely authentic to yourself, and literally just don't give up. Like, be fierce. You know, I mean, it's really so much about success that we see from the mainstream. It's like overnight, but that's just not the creative way. The creative way is kind of messy, and that's what makes it fun. That's a bunch of things though. That wasn't just one.
Oh, that's perfect. And
Yeah.
that's perfect. And, you know, just the idea of being authentic. And like we talked about this a little bit ago about just
Yeah.
being authentic, and it just goes a long way. So yeah. All right. So fun note before we wrap this up, every person that comes on the podcast gets one spin of our random question generator.
Okay.
So if you're ready, I have your question right here, and this might be the most random question. You're a reverse burglar. So that when you steal, so what you steal must cause the person to prosper. What is that item you are stealing?
What I steal will cause the person that I steal from to prosper?
Yes. So basically you're taking something bad away from them.
Oh. Okay. Cigarettes?
Okay. That's fair.
If they're a smoker? I don't know. That's like the most random thing that came to my head. So there you go.
Perfect. You know, it's so funny because this random question generator, it's like a party thing. So like you'll get like really random questions like that. And then it's like date night questions. And it's like, I'm not asking that question. Yep. So let's go to the next one. And then that one pops up and it's like, all right, cool.
There you go.
So awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. If anybody wants to check out the new single, new releases coming up, shows, all that stuff, where's the best place to do that?
Just at Emmy Law Music, EMMYLAW on all the socials. And then the music is on all the platforms. Yeah.
Awesome. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you everybody for tuning in. And we will catch you all later.
Thank you.